Hey everyone, Rascally Rasmus here. Today we're going to talk about a bunch of things that I wish I knew when I first started playing Dune Awakening, and with that, let's just get straight into it. The first thing is setting a respawn point. In your bases, you can walk up to the console, and by clicking this little thing here, you can set your base to be your active respawn point. This is very beneficial doing, so you can ensure that you always spawn close to your base. Aside from that, when out in the world exploring, it can also be super beneficial crafting a respawn beacon, which only costs 20 salvage metal to craft. These are simple to put down. You just equip them on your action bar and you can pop them down anywhere. You can only have one of these active, but it's super useful to place them down when you're out exploring further from your base. And once you're done in an area, you can also pick it back up to reuse it elsewhere if you wish to do that. Next up, we should also talk about unlocking crafting recipes. To unlock crafting recipes, you need to get intel, and you get intel from leveling up as a baseline. Aside from that, you can also find intel around in the world, and it's marked on your map with these 3 little houses. So if you're ever finding yourself running low on intel, just open your map and look for nearby intel spots and go collect some more intel. I also want to mention that drinking is super important. It is for obvious reasons, because if you don't drink, you will die. But also you have these little breakpoints on the hydration bar down the left corner. And for every breakpoint you reach or every breakpoint you're over, the more stamina you'll also have available. And this is obviously beneficial not only while climbing or traversing, but also for combat, because it allows you to dodge more things. The more stamina you have, the more times you can dodge, or the more times you can hit with your melee weapon, or the more times you can block. So keeping your water meter filled is super important. So obviously water is really important. Later on, you'll also need clean water to craft certain things, but early on, the most important aspect of water is just to keep your thirst quenched, essentially. The easiest way to get water is from these flower fields that you can find around the world. And they are also marked on your map with a little water drop. So if you're running low on water, then look for water drop on your map. It should be noted though that you can only fill your thirst meter up to the first little breakpoint. So only the 1/3 of your thirst meter can be filled from these flower fields. To fill it higher, you need clean water. And early on, the best way to get clean water is to essentially slay enemies and extract their blood with a blood extractor, and then purify it in your base with a blood purifier. To store the blood, you need these blood sacks. And here it's important to note that you can't have more than 1 blood sack on you at a time, because otherwise 1 blood sack will only fit the blood off of 3 enemies. So if you want to go out and grind a lot of blood, I'd recommend crafting multiple blood sacks, at least early on. And speaking of water, it should also be noted that while you're sheltered inside your base, you don't lose any water. And if you want to extend the storage capacity you have in the blood purifiers, you can craft these little water cisterns to store more water. I also want to talk a bit about where you should build your first base. Early in the game, as you might imagine, I think it's super important to build your first base close to flowers, so you can always go out to drink before you get a steady water supply going. Aside from that, it's very beneficial if you can place your base close to important resources. And early on, important resources could be fuel cells, copper ore, stone, really just anything early on. If it can be close to a research station or an enemy camp or one of these orange caves on the map as well too, that's great. But the most important thing is just to have the base be close to flowers. Aside from that, I'd actually strongly recommend looking out for an abandoned base. Other players may abandon their bases as they progress further into the game. And so very early in the game, we found an abandoned base and we basically just took this over. And this base even has some resources as well. So if you find bases while you initially start, you can walk up to them and see if there's any like access settings on the gate. And if there's not, then you can actually just go in and place a console down and you can claim the base for yourself. It's also important that you realize that your first base will definitely not be your forever base in the game, because it's important to move your base around with you as you progress through the game. Otherwise, travel time will become way too long. That's not to say that you can't keep your first base if you desire to, but it's an important aspect to be willing to move your base. And as a baseline, you can have 2 smaller bases and 1 larger base, which you will unlock a bit later into the game. In this case, we initially started with a base down here, and then decided we also wanted a base up here. And so it's important to think about logically where should you be placing your base. So our line of thinking with placing our base here was that it at least would be close to the northern zone. So we'd be closer to the next zone, which we figured would be north since there's no going south from here. If you really like the base you built, you can sort of take it with you, or at least you can make a blueprint of it. you can research the Solido Replicator here. And once you've crafted one, you can essentially just walk up to your base. You can say copy blueprint. And now we have a full blueprint of the base that can be placed down. So obviously it's important that you still have land ready to place it. Otherwise you won't be able to place it down. And you also need the materials to build it. But this is a way to, if you build a really awesome building, you can sort of bring it with you. It doesn't bring your crafting stations or anything like that with you, just the shell. So if you like moving around a lot or just like having a little pop-up base, then the Solido Replicator is actually a really strong tool. It's also important to note that as you make it to the second zone of the game will actually force you with one of the quests to abandon all your bases in the first zone of the game. And so this is obviously pretty problematic if you'd like to keep your base in the first area. And you still can keep your base, but it's a little bit finicky. Essentially, you do need to abandon all your bases, so it's really hard to keep more than one base. But if you want to just keep one of them, you can do it by essentially going up to the base, and you can choose to abandon the base, like I'm doing here, and abandon it. And as soon as you've abandoned it, the quest requirement is fulfilled. But then as soon as that is done, you can pop down a new console, and doing so will basically allow you to keep your base. Just make sure there's no other players around while you're doing it so they don't come in and steal your base or all your stuff. It's also really important to keep your base powered, because if you don't keep it powered, you won't be able to use any of your crafting stations. And aside from that, your base will have no shield. And without a shield, your base will start to slowly decay. And so to keep your base powered, you simply just need to put fuel cells into your generator. So it's really important to build a generator in your base. Aside from that, it's important that you have enough generators to fuel your entire base. So if you go to your console and you go to general settings, you can see how much power your base is currently using. In this case, our base is using 90 power out of a total of 150 available. So if you start exceeding the power limits, then make sure you build another generator and also make sure to put fuel cells into it. It should be mentioned that on the crafting stations, you can see the total power cost down below here. As you can see, the small chemical refinery will cost 15 power to have. For our next tip, I'd recommend that you dump all your fuel cells into your generators. If you have multiple, then split them between the generators. Otherwise, just put them all into a single generator, as you can put up to basically 20 days worth of fuel into every single generator. And each fuel cell gives 1 real-life hour of power for your generator. So you can dump a lot of fuel cells in here. And if you should need your fuel cells for something else, like a new generator or for crafting or whatever, you can actually just go to storage on the generator and take them directly out of the storage again. A quick tip is to make sure that you always dump as many of your items at base. Like always before going out, consider, is this something I need? And if it's not, then you should drop it off at base, because not only is it important to drop it off so you can carry other stuff with you that you might find while out exploring, but also if you get eaten by the worm, for instance, you will lose everything in your bag. And even if you don't get eaten by the worm, but just die in any other way, then you'll still have to go loot your backpack, where some of your stuff will be lost if you don't claim it from the backpack. And in terms of storage, it's important to realize here that this chest obviously has 10 slots of storage, but it's limited in the capacity as well down here. So if you for some reason can't stack into a chest, it's because its total capacity is full in terms of the weight in the chest. So just a quick tip, because I didn't realize initially that this was why I couldn't stack into a chest, and I was just really confused why the game wouldn't allow me to stack my items into a chest. I also want to point out that in the journey tab, so if you press J on the keyboard or just go up here, you have a bunch of quests, and some of them are basically designed to guide you through the game. And on top of that, it will also reward you with a little bit of experience or other rewards. So keep an eye on the journey tab, because it's actually pretty helpful, and there's some decent rewards in here, like some extra XP is always nice. Aside from that, I also want to point out that you should definitely keep an eye on the contract board as you travel around to different settlements. The contract board offers various quests, and you can essentially just pick these up and then you can go do them. So definitely don't neglect the contract board, because it's a good source of some extra Solari and also some extra experience or other rewards. Here in Griffin's Reach trade post in Hagga Bassin, you should especially be prioritizing doing the Planetologist basics, because doing this contract will unlock the Planetologist Skilltree for you. And the Planetologist Skilltree offers some very good bonuses early on. For instance, this one will give you 10% mining gain or increased mining yield per skill point, or for the first skill point in it, and then an additional 5% for the subsequent skill points. You also have this one, which reduces max durability loss, which we'll talk a bit about a little later. And you also have this one, which reduces fuel cost. So there's some really helpful skill points in here. We should probably also talk a bit about the skill trees themselves. In the skill trees, you have 3 different types of skills. You have the passive abilities, which are the circles. You have abilities, which are the squares, and you have techniques, which are these octagons. Passive abilities are always active no matter what. So as soon as I put a skill point into the cutaway mining, I will always have my increased mining yield active. As for abilities, you can have up to 3 abilities active. These you can switch out at any point, but only 3 of them active at a time. And lastly, we have the techniques, the octagons, and these function pretty much like abilities. You can have up to 3 of them active. You can switch them out at any point, but they are essentially more powerful passive abilities, and so these can be really build defining. For instance, this one gives 20% ability cooldown reduction from the first point you put into it. I should quickly mention that to respec, you can just press R here, but you can only do this once every 48 hours, so it's something to keep in mind before you pick a bunch of bad abilities or abilities you just really wanted to see, but you don't necessarily want to use. I also want to mention that for contracts, when you're going places, you can actually pick up items for contracts before you go and do the contract. So if you happen to be in an area, for instance, over here at the first Imperial testing station, there's actually a bunch of quest items that you can pick up in advance. And if you pick these up beforehand, you can pick up the contract later and you'll be able to turn the items in fine. So do keep an eye out when exploring the world, because you might find quest items preemptively, and then you'll be able to very quickly turn in contracts later on because you already have the quest items. The quest items seems to weigh nothing, so there's absolutely no downside to picking them up. Another quick tip is that you may get quests that say stuff like craft, 20 copper ingots. And if you've already done the crafting of these copper ingots earlier, it's important to note that you don't need to actually craft them to complete it. All you need to do is pick up said copper ingots. So if you have them in a chest or something like that, or your friend has them, then you can simply just pick up the copper ingots and that will fulfill the quest requirement. I also want to strongly recommend keeping an eye out for crashed vehicles like this one. If you find them, then make sure that you scrap them because they can offer some very valuable materials. So do make sure that you scrap any and all vehicles you find because, these materials can be pretty rare. I also want to talk a bit about vehicles, or more specifically, how to craft your first Sandbike, because I found it a little confusing. And that's partly because I did it before the game taught me how to do it. But even so, I don't think the game explains it very well. What you need to do is first research the Sandbike appropriate things. So all 3 of these you should really research, or at least the first one and the third one, depending on who you're playing with. The back seat is only if you want to carry a friend around. After you've researched the things, you want to go to the fabricator, and then you want to make essentially 3 tires. You want to make an engine, a chassis, a hull, a PSU, and you also want to make a welding torch and possibly some welding wire, which is used to repair the Sandbike. And then you want to make a vehicle backup tool, and the vehicle backup tool is very important, but we'll get back to that. Once you've crafted all your pieces, you want to equip your welding torch, and that will allow you to put down the different parts of the Sandbike. And here you can simply just walk up and you can left click, and as in this way you can add them one by one to the Sandbike. Once they're all added, you need to fuel your Sandbike, and to do that you hold F and then you go to the fuel symbol and you let go. However, you need fuel to be able to do so, and the Sandbike runs off of vehicle fuel cells. And these can be crafted at the, the chemical refinery here. And they're pretty cheap. They just take a little bit of fuel cells, 25 fuel cells to craft one of these. And one of these can fully power your vehicle twice. So you get quite a bit of fuel in just one fuel cell. It's also worth noting that your initial Sandbike can only have one of 3 things equipped on the back module. And here you can choose to either have a passenger seat, or some extra inventory on the bike, or a booster. And so you have to choose between these 3 items. As mentioned, crafting your vehicle backup tool is also really important. The vehicle backup tool allows you to take your vehicle with you, so you can summon it anywhere and you can ride around on it. And that's the worm. And so it's super nice to just have it for the quality of life it offers, But it's also really important so your vehicle doesn't break. First of all, if you leave your vehicle out in storms, it will take damage. But also if you're about to be eaten by the worm, or you drive into quicksand or anything like that, you should just quickly pull out your vehicle tool and pick up your vehicle with the vehicle tool just by left clicking while looking at it. And this way you can save the vehicle, because even if you get eaten, the vehicle will still be stored in your vehicle tool. And it's also worth noting that if you have inventory on your vehicle, then you cannot store it with the vehicle backup tool. So this means that if you have inventory on it, then your vehicle is at even more risk than it normally would be, because you can't just pick it up and take it with you. Something else I also wondered about early on was, what does a better mining tool do? Because mining is a bit different in Dune than it is in a lot of other games, so I couldn't exactly see how you could speed up the mining. So by upgrading your mining tool, you get access to mining better materials, which makes sense, but you also get a higher yield of materials when you do it with a better tool. So for instance, with this one, you'd get 40 copper mining with it, whereas this one would give you 63 copper mining with it. So upgrading your mining tool is actually quite important even before you progress to the next zone, if you get the option to do so. Another quick tip is that before we got ourselves a suspensor belt to not take fall damage, we climbed some very high mountains, but it can be more difficult getting back down again because sometimes there's not an easy platform to land on. So this tip is essentially just that when falling, you can press space to try to latch onto the wall next to you. So if I go out here, I can just spam space and he will eventually grab on as long as we're close enough to the wall. I also quickly want to explain durability in the game, because all items, including your vehicles, your equipment, your tools, everything has durability. And you will get the option to repair items, but as you repair items, the items will lose max durability. So as you can see on my blood extractor here, it has a little bit of durability left, and if I were to repair it, then the red bar on the right would essentially grow, and you cannot repair beyond the red bar. So eventually items will become entirely useless and you will need to replace them. Lastly, I want to talk a bit about which class you should play. Well, I'm not actually going to tell you, because you should play whatever you think sounds fun. What I wanted to actually say is that you can unlock all the skill trees in the game by just playing through the game. You'll find trainers that will teach you the ways of the other classes. So just pick whatever your gut is telling you to pick early on, and you'll be able to unlock the other things later on. So if you have regrets, you'll be able to change up your class on the fly, and you'll be able to go into multiple classes skill trees at once. That being said, in the Griffin's Trade, or a Griffin's Reach trade post here in the first little trade post you'll actually have the Trooper trainer. So Trooper is definitely the earliest one, or earliest other class you can unlock. So maybe don't start with Trooper like I did, but also if you want to play a Trooper, then go for it, because Trooper does have some really cool things, such as the Shigawire Claw, which is just plain fun to play around with. And that is going to be it for this video. I hope it's been helpful. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Until next time.